Hello, friends. You're watching The Night Watchman, where every day you'll hear a brand new horror story that will send chills down your spine. But to keep bringing you these terrifying tales, we need your love and support. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now let's begin the story. I never thought fear could come from someone you loved. Not the kind of fear that makes you jump at shadows, but the kind that eats you alive from the inside. Quiet, steady, unrelenting. My name is Michael Grant, and I used to believe that love could survive anything. Turns out I was wrong. I grew up in Willow Creek, Oregon, a small, unremarkable town where life moved slow and everyone knew each other's names. My dad was a carpenter, my mom a school teacher. We weren't rich, but we were content. They taught me to be kind, to be loyal, to never lie to the people you love. I carried those lessons with me into adulthood, or at least I tried to. I met Hannah when I was 24. She was everything I wasn't. Spontaneous, magnetic. The kind of woman who could walk into a room and make everyone stop talking. I met her at a friend's wedding, where she spilled red wine on my shirt and laughed like it was fate. We dated for a year before moving in together, married 2 years later. The first few years were good, better than good even. We had a cozy little house on the edge of town, a dog named Baxter, and plans for kids someday. We worked hard. I was an HVAC technician. She managed a local real estate office. We didn't have much, but we had each other, or so I thought. The first crack appeared on a rainy Tuesday night. Hannah had started coming home later than usual. Client meetings, she'd say, dropping her keys on the counter, always with a faint smell of something. Cologne that wasn't mine. At first I brushed it off. She worked in real estate. Late nights were part of the job. But then there were the silences. The blank looks when I talked to her. The phone she never left face up anymore. "Everything okay at work?" I asked one evening. She looked up from her wine glass, eyes glazed. "Yeah, just tired." "Why?" "You've been distant." Her jaw tightened. "So now I can't be tired without you assuming something's wrong?" I wanted to argue, but something about her tone made my stomach turn. That night, when she went to take a shower, I checked her phone. I knew it was wrong, but something inside me needed to know. It was locked with a new passcode. That was the moment I realized I'd lost her. Not physically, not yet, but emotionally. The woman who once shared everything with me was now guarding her life behind a 4-digit wall. Weeks passed. The distance grew. She started wearing new clothes, doing her hair differently, buying perfume I'd never seen before. One night she came home late again. I was sitting in the living room, lights dimmed. "Long day?" I asked quietly. She froze in the doorway. "What are you doing sitting in the dark?" "Waiting for you." She rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic." I wanted to tell her I could smell him. Whoever he was, that faint, musky scent clinging to her skin like guilt. Instead, I just said, "I made dinner. You should eat before it gets cold." She walked past me without a word. I stared at her empty chair at the table for a long time. A month later, I finally got my proof. My friend Evan, who worked at a gas station off Highway 22, called me one afternoon. "Hey, Mike, this might sound weird, but I saw Hannah here yesterday." "So?" "She wasn't alone. Some guy in a black Mercedes. They were holding hands." My throat tightened. "You sure?" "Yeah, I'm sorry, man. I didn't say anything for a long time." When I hung up, I sat in silence, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the house. That night, I didn't confront her. I watched, I waited, and what I saw in the days that followed changed me. Hannah would stand in front of the mirror, humming softly as she got ready, humming like she used to before our date nights. Except now, her smiles weren't for me. One Friday night, I followed her. She left around 8 p.m., claiming she had to meet a client downtown. I waited 10 minutes, then got in my truck and drove after her, headlights off. She parked outside the Crescent Motel, a rundown place near the edge of town. I watched her walk to room 7 and knock. The door opened. A tall man, maybe mid-30s, with neatly combed hair and a suit that screamed money. She smiled, that same smile that used to be mine, and disappeared inside. I sat there for an hour, rain tapping against the windshield, my hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. When she came out, her hair was messy, her lipstick smeared. She got into her car, and for a second, our eyes met in the rearview mirror. I don't think she saw me, but I saw her. And I swear, there was no guilt in her eyes. Just emptiness. For days I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, could barely breathe. But then something strange started happening. Every night around 2:30 a.m., I'd hear footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate. The floorboards creaked. Once, twice, then silence. At first I thought it was the dog, but Baxter slept at my feet every night. Then came the whispers. Faint, just beyond hearing. Michael. The first time I heard my name, I shot up in bed. The house was still, but the smell, cologne, filled the air. That same one that clung to Hannah's clothes. I told myself I was imagining things. That stress and betrayal were twisting my mind. But the next night, it happened again, and the night after that. One evening, while Hannah was in the shower, I heard it, the faint buzz of her phone on the counter. It lit up with a message. Same room tonight? No name, just a number. I took a screenshot and sent it to myself. Then curiosity, or madness, got the better of me. I replied, yeah, 9 p.m., room 7. When she came out, wrapped in a towel, she smiled faintly. Going to bed early? Yeah, I said. Long day. At 8:45, I parked across the street from the Crescent Motel again. But this time, I didn't go inside. I waited. At exactly 9, Hannah pulled up. She went inside room 7. The man followed minutes later. I stepped out of the truck, heart pounding. Then something I still can't explain happened. The lights in room 7 flickered. Violently. Once, twice. Then, darkness. A sound tore through the night. A scream. Not Hannah's voice, not the man's. Something else. Something wrong. I rushed toward the building, my boots splashing in the puddles. The air was ice cold, every breath burning my lungs. When I reached the door, it was cracked open. The smell of iron and smoke hit me like a punch. Inside, chaos. The lamp was shattered, the sheets soaked in something dark. No one was there. No Hannah. No man. Just a phone on the floor, its screen cracked, still glowing. It was hers. The police said there was no sign of forced entry, no bodies, no trace of blood matching either of them. Just gone. At first I thought maybe she ran away, that this was her escape plan. But then things started happening in the house. The lights flickered every night at 9, the same hour she disappeared. I'd wake to the sound of footsteps pacing the hallway, and every now and then, the faint sound of someone crying. Once I found muddy footprints in the kitchen, bare feet, too small to be mine. The smell of that same cologne filled the air. I moved out of that house 3 months later, but the nightmares followed me. Sometimes I wake up to whispers, sometimes I see a shadow at the foot of my bed. Long hair, damp clothes, head tilted just slightly to the side. And sometimes I hear her voice. Why did you follow me, Michael? I tell myself she's gone, that what I saw that night wasn't real. But every time I pass that stretch of highway, I see the Crescent Motel sign flickering and room 7's curtain swaying like someone's watching me from inside. It's been 6 years. I never remarried. Baxter died 2 winters ago. I still live in Oregon, still fix air conditioners, still wake up at 2:30 a.m. sometimes and listen to the silence. They never found Hannah's body, but last month I got a letter, no return address. Inside, a single motel room key, number 7, and beneath it, a note written in her handwriting, "You should have left me alone." Story 2. I never imagined the person I'd fear most would be the one I shared a bed with. My name's Ethan Ward, 35 years old, a systems analyst for a logistics firm based out of Portland, Oregon. I live, or used to live, in a modest 3-bedroom house on the east side of the city with my wife Rachel and our 7-year-old son Caleb. From the outside, we were the picture of stability, the kind of couple who smiled at barbecues, sent out matching Christmas cards, and waved at neighbors from the driveway. People used to say we were lucky. You two have it figured out. But luck, I've learned, is just a word people use before the storm hits. I met Rachel in college at the University of Oregon. I was the quiet one, head down, buried in projects and deadlines. She was light itself, bold, radiant, the kind of person who made strangers feel like old friends. She studied psychology, and she used to say she wanted to understand what makes people fall apart. Maybe that should have been my first warning. We got married young, me at 24, her at 22. When Caleb was born 4 years later, she insisted on staying home until he started school. I was proud to provide, even if it meant late nights and endless reports. Rachel called me her rock, her safe place. But rocks crack under pressure too. At first, the changes were small. She started sleeping later, complaining of headaches. Wine bottles appeared in the recycling more often. I told myself it was just stress, that motherhood was overwhelming. But there was something else, a distance I couldn't name. She stopped touching me, stopped looking at me the same way. I tried to fix it. Flowers, surprise dinners, weekends away. But each time she smiled in that polite, empty way that said, "I'm already somewhere else." It was a Thursday, mid-February. Portland rain tapped against the windows like impatient fingers. Caleb had fallen asleep on the couch watching cartoons, and Rachel had said she was going to the store to pick up groceries. That was at 7:15 p.m. By 9:30, she still wasn't home. When she finally came through the door, she didn't have any bags. Her cheeks were flushed, eyes glossy, not from wine, but adrenaline. "Where's the food we're showing now?" I asked. She blinked, startled. "Oh God, I forgot. I ran into Megan from school. We started talking and..." She laughed nervously. "You know how it goes." But her phone buzzed in her pocket. She jumped. I caught a glimpse of the screen, a name I didn't recognize. Aaron, work Jim. I didn't say anything. Not that night. But something inside me shifted. Over the next few weeks, I started watching. I memorized her new habits. Morning jogs that took longer than they should. Parent-teacher meetings that went late into the night. Perfume she never wore before. One night when she was asleep, I reached for her phone on the nightstand. Locked. Rachel had never locked her phone before. I tried Caleb's birthday. It opened. I wish it hadn't. There were messages, dozens, some explicit, others emotional. Not just from Aaron. There were names I'd never heard. Chase, Ryan, Logan. At least 8 different men. Photos, hotel reservations. One message read, "You make me feel alive again. He's so predictable. You're chaos, and I need that." That night, I sat in the dark for hours, staring at her sleeping beside me. The woman I'd loved for 11 years. The woman I'd built a life with. My chest felt hollow. I couldn't even cry. I just stopped feeling. 2 mornings later, I couldn't hold it in anymore. Rachel was at the kitchen counter, stirring sugar into her coffee. The smell of burnt toast filled the air. Caleb was upstairs getting ready for school. "Rachel," I said quietly, "we need to talk." She didn't look up. "About what?" "I know." Her hand froze mid-stir. "Know what?" I met her eyes. The messages. The men. The silence was brutal. Then she set the spoon down and crossed her arms. "You went through my phone? That's your concern?" My voice cracked. "You've been sleeping with strangers while your son is upstairs. And that's what you're mad about?" Her lip trembled, but she didn't cry. "You don't understand, Ethan. You're never here. You work. You come home. You stare at your computer. I was lonely. I needed something. Someone. 8 someones," I snapped. She turned away. "You make it sound simple." It wasn't. I slammed my hand on the counter. Caleb's footsteps thudded on the stairs and we both froze. When he entered the kitchen smiling, holding his backpack, Rachel smiled back as if nothing had happened. "Ready for school, buddy?" And just like that, the lie lived on. Over the next few weeks, she changed again. Not softer, colder. She'd disappear for hours. Once she didn't come home until 3 a.m. and claimed she lost track of time. I slept in the guest room. When I told her I wanted a divorce, she laughed. "Who would believe you, Ethan?" "You're paranoid. You've always been paranoid." That night, she smashed a picture frame against the wall and sobbed uncontrollably. I'd never seen her like that, unhinged, desperate, wild. She whispered, "I just want my family back." And for a moment, I almost believed she meant it. But then came the call. It was a Sunday morning. I was driving Caleb to his grandmother's house. My phone buzzed, an unknown number. "Mr. Ward?" a voice asked. "This is Detective Halverson with the Portland Police Department. We need you to come down to the station. It concerns your wife." My heart stopped. What happened? "She's in custody." Attempted abduction. My mind couldn't process the words. Abduction? Of who? "We'll explain when you get here." At the station, they told me what happened. Rachel had been found in a grocery store parking lot trying to walk away with another woman's baby. She pepper-sprayed the father when he confronted her, screaming that he was stealing her child. When police arrived, she was disoriented, reeking of vodka, mumbling about how they took Caleb and she just wanted him back. She thought the baby was our son. When I saw her in holding, she was barely recognizable. Her once blonde hair hung in greasy strands, her eyes hollow. "They took him from me," she sobbed when she saw me. "They took Caleb. I just wanted my baby back." "Rachel," I whispered, "Caleb's fine." "He's safe." She shook her head violently. "No, he's gone." "You let them take him." It was like talking to a ghost. They transferred her to a psychiatric facility for evaluation. I spent the next weeks fighting off CPS, lawyers, and sleepless nights. Every time I looked at Caleb, I saw her madness lingering behind his blue eyes. I found her journals later, hidden behind the dryer, pages upon pages of messy handwriting. She wrote about shadows in the walls, about hearing Caleb's voice when he wasn't home, about how the man in the mirror tells me what to do. That was when I stopped blaming myself. Months passed. I filed for divorce, gained full custody of Caleb, and tried to rebuild something resembling normalcy. Then one afternoon, her doctor called. "She's stabilized," he said. "She's asking to see you." Just once, against my better judgment, I went. She was sitting in the hospital garden, pale and thin, staring at the sky. When she saw me, she smiled faintly. "Ethan," she said softly, "you look tired." "I am." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I don't know what's real anymore." I just wanted to feel safe again. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Before I left, she grabbed my hand. Her nails dug into my skin. "They're still here," she whispered, "in the walls. In our house. Don't you hear them at night?" That night back home, I stood in the dark hallway outside Caleb's room. The house was silent, but as I reached to turn off the light, I heard it, a faint whisper, a woman's voice behind the walls. "Ethan!" I froze, my pulse hammered. The sound came again, soft, pleading, familiar. "Please don't take him from me." The next morning I called an electrician. He tore open the drywall near the bedroom. There was nothing there. No wires, no animals, just hollow space and dust. But that night when I tucked Caleb in, he looked up at me and said, "Daddy, Mommy talks to me when you're asleep." Sometimes I still hear her voice in the house. Sometimes I smell her perfume in the hall, faint and sweet. I tell myself it's memory, grief, imagination. But on the nights when the rain hits the windows just right and the shadows stretch across the walls like reaching hands, I remember her words. "You don't understand what makes people fall apart. I understand now. Love isn't the opposite of horror. Sometimes it is the horror, sweet enough to blind you until you can't see the monster standing right beside you. And sometimes, even after she's gone, you can still feel her watching, still whispering, still waiting." Story 3. I never thought love could turn into something that keeps you awake at night, staring at the dark corner of your room, wondering if someone's out there watching. My name is Aaron Blake. I'm 32 years old, and for the longest time, I thought I had a good life. Not a perfect one, but good. I grew up in Ashwood, Oregon, a quiet suburban town where people still waved to their neighbors, and the loudest thing at night was the rain against your window. After college, I landed a job as a civil engineer for a small construction firm. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and kept me busy. That's where I met Hannah. She was a project coordinator, organized, funny, and always humming some tune under her breath while typing away. The kind of person who lit up a room without trying. We started as colleagues, then friends, then something deeper. By the time I realized I loved her, we were already inseparable. We got married 2 years later, bought a small 2-story house on the edge of town, and adopted a golden retriever named Rufus. For a while, everything felt like a quiet dream. Late-night movies, Sunday pancakes, inside jokes whispered half asleep. But good things don't rot all at once. They erode quietly, piece by piece, until one day you wake up and realize you're standing in the ruins. It started small. Hannah had always been an open person, left her phone on the kitchen counter, passwords saved on her laptop, nothing to hide. But sometime last spring that changed. She became distant, distracted. Her phone was always face down, her laughter quieter, her eyes somewhere else, even when she was sitting right in front of me. I remember the first time I felt it. Really felt it. It was a Tuesday night. I was home early, sitting on the couch, and her phone buzzed beside me. The screen lit up for a second. Eli T., a man's name I'd never heard before. When she came out of the shower, I tried to keep my voice casual. "Hey, you got a message from someone named Eli?" She froze for half a second, barely enough to notice, but I did. "Oh, that's just someone from work. We're planning a campaign launch," I nodded, pretending to believe her. But something cold settled in my chest. Weeks went by, and Hannah's work dinners became frequent. Her perfume would linger long after midnight, mixed with the faint scent of wine. I'd stay awake pretending to work on blueprints while the clock ticked louder than my heartbeat. One night when she came home past 11, I said quietly, "You used to tell me when you'd be late." She sighed, tossing her bag onto the counter. "Aaron, please don't start. It was a client meeting at 11 p.m. "Not everything runs on your schedule," she snapped, turning away. That was the first time I saw something sharp in her eyes, something that didn't belong to the woman I married. Suspicion is poison. You drink it hoping the other person will die. I told myself not to dig, that love meant trust, but love also meant truth, and I was drowning in the lack of it. So one Friday, when she said she was meeting clients again, I followed her. I parked a few blocks from her office and waited in the drizzle. The air smelled of wet asphalt and betrayal. At 7:15 p.m., she walked out, umbrella in hand. Instead of turning toward her car, she crossed the street to a silver BMW idling under a street lamp. The driver stepped out, tall, clean-cut, confident in that effortless way some men are. He smiled and she smiled back, the kind of smile that used to be mine. Then she kissed him. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't confront them. I couldn't. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel until my fingers went numb, watching as they disappeared into the rain. When she got home that night, I was waiting in the dark. "How was the meeting?" I asked. She froze at the door. "It was fine." I stepped closer. "Was Eli there?" Her face drained of color. What do you mean?" "I saw you, Hannah. I followed you." Her lips trembled, but her eyes were defiant. "You shouldn't have done that." "I shouldn't have." "You're the one lying to me." She turned away, shoulders shaking. "You don't understand, Aaron. I felt alone for so long. You're always buried in work. Eli listens to me. He makes me feel alive again." I wanted to scream, to throw something, but instead I just said quietly, "So this is how you fix it? By crawling into someone else's arms?" She said nothing, and in that silence I knew our marriage was over. Divorce would have been clean, if not for him, but Eli didn't vanish when Hannah moved out. He lingered. At first it was subtle, a car idling too long outside my street, a man's shape reflected in a shop window. Once I found cigarette butts by my garage. Neither Hannah nor I smoked. I asked her, "Did you tell him where we live?" She hesitated. "I might have mentioned it once." "Mentioned it or showed him?" Her silence was enough. "You let him into our home," I whispered. Her eyes filled with tears. "He just wanted to see where I lived." "He cares about me." "Cares," I said. "He's watching us, Hannah." "He's stalking you." For the first time, she looked afraid, but not enough to leave him. It was 2:43 a.m. when I heard it, the metallic rattle of the back door handle. I shot out of bed, heart hammering. Rufus started barking, low and uneasy. I grabbed the baseball bat from under the dresser and crept toward the kitchen. The handle shook again, harder this time. "Who's there?" I shouted. Silence. Then a calm, steady voice through the door. "She doesn't love you anymore, Aaron. Let her go before I make you." My blood turned to ice. It was him. By the time the police arrived, he was gone. They found muddy footprints by the door, size 11, male, that was all. When I told Hannah, she shook her head. "Eli would never do that. You're just paranoid. That word stuck like glass in my throat. A week later, I found a note under my windshield wiper. "She's mine now." Then another tucked under the doormat. "You can't hide from love." I filed police reports. Nothing happened. "Unless he hurts someone, our hands are tied," the officer said. I started sleeping with the lights on. Rufus barked at every sound. Every creak of the floorboards felt like footsteps. I thought I was losing my mind, until the night I saw him. It was pouring outside. I was standing by the window, half drunk on whiskey and exhaustion, when the motion light by the garage flicked on. A figure stood there, rain dripping off his coat. He raised his hand slowly and waved. Just waved. I froze, the glass cold under my fingers. He turned, walked back toward the street, and vanished into the dark. The next morning, I found another note on the porch. "You look better when you're scared." I stopped going to work for a week, moved to a friend's place across town. But the calls followed. Blocked numbers, heavy breathing, and once, a whisper. "You can't keep her away from me." The divorce finalized 3 months later. Hannah and Eli moved in together, or so I heard. I tried to move on. I sold the house, left Ashwood, started over in Denver. For a while it worked. I met someone new. We got married last year. Sometimes I even believed it was behind me, until last night. My phone buzzed at 12:17 a.m., unknown number. One text. "Look outside." I hesitated, my pulse racing. Slowly I parted the curtains. Across the street, under the dim yellow of a street lamp, a man stood, hands in pockets, head tilted slightly, smiling. My wife stirred beside me. "Aaron? What's wrong?" I didn't answer, because as I watched, he raised his hand, gave me that same slow, familiar wave, and disappeared into the rain. I stared at the text again. "You never deserved her." And somewhere deep down, beneath the layers of years and distance, I felt that same old dread crawl back into my bones. Because Eli Turner was still out there, watching, waiting, and he knows where I live. Story 4. I used to think marriage was supposed to feel safe, like coming home after a long day and finally being able to breathe. But the truth is, sometimes home is where the real nightmare begins. My name's Ethan Cole, I'm 35, and I live in a quiet town called Haverfield, Illinois. The kind of place where people still wave at each other when they drive by, and the loudest thing at night is the hum of crickets. I used to love that stillness. These days, it feels like it's watching me. I met Rachel 10 years ago at a small art gallery in Chicago. I wasn't even supposed to be there. A friend had dragged me out after my last breakup, insisting I needed to see people again. She was standing near a painting of an empty hallway, glass of red wine in hand, her eyes fixed on something far away. There was something magnetic about her, not in the obvious movie kind of way. More like, if she looked at you long enough, you felt exposed. We talked for hours that night. She told me she was a freelance designer, lived alone, loved thunderstorms. I told her I was an electrician who hated silence. She laughed. It wasn't loud, just this soft, breathy laugh that made the hair on my arm stand up. I remember thinking, I could listen to that forever. We married a year later, moved to Haverfield, bought a small 2-story house at the end of Maple Drive. It had an old oak tree in the yard and creaky wooden floors. Rachel said it had character. I said it needed work. We met in the middle, like we always did. For the first few years, things were good. Simple. Mornings with coffee and quiet music. Evenings with takeout and reruns of The Office. We talked about starting a family, but Rachel always said, not yet. I want to enjoy us a little longer, I didn't argue. I was happy just being near her. Then about 5 years in, things started to shift. Little things at first. She started sleeping later, staying out more. When I'd ask where she was, she'd just say, "Out with friends." Her phone started lighting up at night with messages she'd flip face down. I told myself not to be paranoid, but one night I came home from a late job, around midnight, and found her sitting in the dark kitchen, staring out the window. No lights, no sound, just staring. "Rach?" I said softly. She didn't turn. When she finally spoke, her voice was low. "Do you ever feel like the house changes when you're gone?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Like it breathes. Like it's waiting." I laughed, thinking she was just tired. "You've been watching too many horror movies." But she didn't smile. She just whispered, "Maybe." That should have been the first warning. Over the next few months, she grew more distant. The woman who once filled every room with color started vanishing into herself. She'd sit in the living room for hours, eyes fixed on nothing. Sometimes I'd hear her talking softly to herself in the hallway. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd just say, "You wouldn't understand." I started finding things. A man's hoodie crumpled in the backseat of her car. Not mine. Receipts from a motel off Highway 14. Perfume that wasn't the kind she wore when we met. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. "It's not what you think," she said. "Then tell me what it is." Her eyes, cold, unfamiliar, locked on mine. "He understands me. You don't. You never did." That line hit like a knife. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she added quieter, "I'm sorry, Ethan." That night, she packed a bag. I watched her drive away under the orange streetlights, tail lights vanishing into the distance. And for a while, I thought that was the end of it. But it wasn't. A week later, I started hearing things. It began with the sound of footsteps upstairs when I was alone. Then doors creaking open, voices murmuring just out of reach. One night, I woke to the faint sound of a woman crying. It sounded like Rachel. I tore through the house, the hallways, the basement, even the backyard. Nothing. Just the echo of my own heartbeat. The next morning, I found her wedding ring on the kitchen counter. It wasn't there before. The metal was warm to the touch. I tried to tell myself I was losing it, that stress was playing tricks on me. But things got worse. 2 days later, she showed up, middle of the night, standing in the doorway like a ghost. Her hair was wet, her eyes red. "Rach?" I whispered. "What the hell?" She smiled, slow and broken. "I missed home." Something about her voice made my stomach twist. I stepped closer. "Where have you been?" Her smile didn't change. "You shouldn't ask that." She brushed past me, dripping water across the hardwood floor. "I'm tired," she murmured, heading upstairs. I stood frozen. The smell hit me then. Damp earth and something metallic, like rust or blood. When I followed, she was already in bed, facing the wall. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, her side of the bed was empty. Sheets cold. But her clothes were hanging in the closet again. Her perfume bottle on the dresser. Everything back like she'd never left. That's when I called her best friend, Marcy. She sounded confused. "Ethan, what are you talking about?" "Rachel's dead," I froze. "What?" Didn't you hear?" "She was in an accident. Her car went off the road near Lake Marlow. That was 3 nights ago. They found her body yesterday." I couldn't breathe. "But she was here," I whispered. "Last night she came home." Marcy's voice cracked. "Ethan, no. That's not possible." The call ended, but her words didn't. Dead. 3 nights ago. I walked to the bedroom. Her perfume still lingered. The sheets, damp, and on her pillow a long strand of dark hair, wet with lake water. I didn't leave the house for days after that. Couldn't. I kept hearing her around me, the hum of her humming in the bathroom, the creak of the floorboards where she used to stand. Sometimes I'd wake to her whisper right next to my ear, "You said forever." I started to think maybe I'd gone insane. I stopped eating, stopped going to work. All I did was sit in the dark, waiting for her to appear again. Then one night she did. I was sitting at the kitchen table staring at her ring. The clock read 3:12 a.m. The air turned cold. The lights flickered, and there she was, standing by the window, her skin pale as paper, water dripping from her hair. "Why did you follow me?" she whispered. "What?" My voice trembled. "At the motel," she said, tilting her head. "You saw, didn't you?" My throat went dry. "Rach, what? What are you?" Her lips curved into a sad smile. "You kept watching, even after I was gone. You wouldn't let me rest. I didn't." Her hand brushed the table. Water pooled beneath it. "You said forever," she whispered again. "And forever doesn't end just because I stopped breathing." I stumbled back. "You're not real." Her eyes turned black. "Neither was your love." The lights went out. I don't remember much after that. Just the sound of her footsteps circling me in the dark. Her voice, whispering things I'll never repeat. When the sun rose, I was lying on the kitchen floor, soaked through, the words "you said forever" carved into the wood beside me. That was 6 months ago. I moved out of that house, but sometimes I still hear her. In mirrors, in dreams, in the soft hum of the ceiling fan when the night gets too quiet. People tell me to move on, to start over. But I can't, because when I look in the mirror, I swear. Sometimes I see her standing behind me, smiling. And every now and then, when I wake up, there's a wet footprint on my bedroom floor. I told her once I'd love her forever. I think she believed me. Story 5. I was 33 when I realized my wife wasn't the person I thought she was. Not in the cliché, marriage gone cold kind of way, but in a bone-deep, reality-shattering way that made me question every year, every smile, every kiss we ever shared. My name's Ethan Cole, and until a few years ago, I thought I had a pretty decent life. I worked as a systems analyst for a mid-sized tech firm in Portland, Oregon. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well enough for our cozy home in a quiet suburb on the east side of town. My wife, Rachel, was a freelance photographer. Creative, free-spirited, a little chaotic. But that's what I loved about her. She could find beauty in anything. An old diner sign, a rainy street light, the way morning light hit the kitchen counter. We'd been together since our mid-20s, met at a music festival near Eugene. She dropped her camera, and I'd picked it up for her. That simple, awkward moment turned into beers by a food truck, a midnight walk by the river, and a shared Uber ride home where we talked until dawn. I'd never met anyone like her. We got married 3 years later in a small ceremony at Cannon Beach. Just family and a few close friends. For the first few years, I was genuinely happy. The kind of happy that makes you think you finally beat the odds. But happiness fades quietly. You never notice the first crack until it's already spreading beneath the surface. It started small. Little things that didn't add up. Late night shoots that didn't have photos to show. Calls she'd take outside. Whispers I couldn't quite hear. She'd laugh softly and tell me, "It's just work, babe." Don't be weird. The distance between us grew in invisible inches. She stopped touching me the same way. She'd flinch when I tried to kiss her neck, brush me off with a half smile that didn't reach her eyes. I told myself every married couple goes through rough patches, but one night changed that. It was early February, cold rain slicking the streets, that damp Oregon chill that seeps into your bones. I came home late from work. Rachel wasn't there. No text, no call, nothing. I heated leftovers, flipped through Netflix, tried to distract myself. By midnight, she still hadn't come home. My calls went straight to voicemail. She walked through the door at 2:37 a.m. I remember the exact time because I'd been sitting in the dark, watching the clock tick. Her hair was messy, her lipstick smeared. She froze when she saw me. "Jesus, Ethan," she said, forcing a laugh. "You scared me. Where were you?" She blinked like she hadn't expected me to ask. "Out. A shoot ran late. My phone died at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday." She sighed, tossed her bag on the counter. "You don't have to interrogate me every time I'm late." "I'm not interrogating you. I'm asking why your phone's off and you smell like..." I stopped. I didn't even know how to describe it. A mix of perfume, alcohol, and something sharp, metallic. "Like what?" she snapped. "Never mind." She stared at me for a long second. Then her voice softened. "Ethan, you've been working too much. You're exhausted. Please don't turn this into something it's not." She kissed my cheek, a gesture that used to melt me. But this time, It just felt rehearsed. The next morning, I checked her camera. No photos from the shoot, just empty memory cards. That's when I knew. And once you suspect, you start seeing everything. A week later, I found a bar receipt in her coat pocket. 2 drinks, a bottle of wine, and an entree. For 2. The name of the place burned into my mind. The Hollow Lantern. It wasn't anywhere near her usual photography haunts. That Friday, when she told me she had another late shoot, I made up my mind. I was going to follow her. She left around 8:15 p.m. Tight black jeans, leather jacket, hair in loose curls. She looked beautiful, heartbreakingly so. I waited 5 minutes before grabbing my car keys and tailing her. The rain had stopped, leaving a thin fog over the streets. Her taillights glowed red through the mist like a heartbeat leading me into something I couldn't yet name. She didn't drive toward downtown, where most of her clients were. She took the opposite direction, toward the industrial district, where old warehouses lined the road. Finally, she pulled into a small, dimly lit bar wedged between 2 abandoned buildings. The flickering neon sign read, "The Hollow Lantern." I parked across the street, lights off, and watched. A man was waiting outside, tall, broad shoulders, ginger beard. He grinned when he saw her, the kind of grin that belonged to someone who'd been waiting all night. She walked right into his arms. They kissed like they'd done it 100 times before. My stomach dropped. It wasn't the act itself that destroyed me. It was how familiar it looked. The way she tilted her head, the soft laugh, her fingers curling behind his neck. That used to be our thing. I should have left, should have confronted her. But something kept me rooted. I needed to see who this man was. So I followed them inside. The Hollow Lantern was one of those dive bars that smelled like stale beer and cigarettes. Dim light, sticky floors, a jukebox playing classic rock. I sat in a back booth where I could see them. They sat at the bar, Rachel and the redhead, laughing, whispering. At first it was textbook infidelity, drinks, flirty touches, stolen kisses. But then something changed. Rachel started buying drinks for other people, men mostly, young guys. She'd flash that radiant smile, the one that made you feel like you were the only person in the world. A kid, couldn't have been older than 21, sat down beside her, nervous grin, backward cap. Rachel poured him a shot and whispered something in his ear. He laughed, bashful. The redhead, the man, joined in, hyping him up, clapping him on the back. They were tag-teaming him. It looked playful, harmless. But there was something off. The boy's friend tried to pull him away, saying they needed to go. Rachel reached out, touched his arm, and said, "You can come too if you want." Something in her tone wasn't human. It was sweet, coaxing, like a spider whispering to a fly. They left together, Rachel, the redhead, and the 2 boys. I followed. They drove to a rundown house near the river, one of those forgotten rentals with boarded windows and overgrown weeds. Rachel went inside first. The others followed. The redhead locked the door behind them. I waited outside, my heart pounding. At first I heard laughter, music, then muffled shouting. Something crashed, a dull thud, another. Then silence. I froze. Minutes stretched into hours. Finally the door opened. Rachel came out first, her lipstick smeared, hair wild. She looked alive in a way I hadn't seen in years. Behind her, the redhead carried something. Large, heavy, wrapped in a dark blanket. They put it in Rachel's trunk. She leaned against him, whispered something, then they both drove off. I didn't follow. I couldn't. When I finally went inside, the smell hit me first. Metallic, sour. There was a smear of blood on the floor, a chair knocked over, and a shoe by the couch. Just one. I stumbled out and vomited in the weeds. Rachel came home the next morning, smiling, cheerful. She kissed my cheek, asked if I wanted pancakes. I just stared at her. There was dirt under her fingernails. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? The police? That my wife, the sweet photographer everyone adored, was killing people? I said nothing. But over the next few months, missing person reports started popping up on the news. Young men mostly. Last seen leaving bars on the east side of Portland. Rachel started sleeping better, laughing more. She was radiant again. One night, I caught her looking out the window at the streetlight, smiling to herself. I asked, "What are you thinking about?" She turned, still smiling, and said, "How quiet it is when the world finally stops pretending." I didn't understand then. I do now. I left her 6 months later, filed for divorce. She didn't fight it, didn't cry, just smiled and said, "You finally learned when to walk away." 2 years have passed. I live alone now, in a small apartment overlooking the Willamette River. I still check the local news every night. Another disappearance, another missing face. And sometimes I'll catch a photo from a crime scene in the paper. A faint reflection in a window, a shadow behind the police tape. Her hair, her smile, Rachel. And every time I see it, I wonder when she'll come for me. Because monsters like her don't stop hunting. They just wait. And if anyone ever finds me missing, tell them it was her. Rachel Cole, the woman who hunts. Story 6. I was 32 the summer my life quietly fell apart. Not in the explosive way people imagine, no shouting matches or police lights, but in small, almost invisible ways that you only notice after the damage is done. My name's Ryan Caldwell, and I've spent most of my life in Ashfield, Oregon, a timber town tucked between the pines and a river that never stops whispering. My parents still live a few miles out, same worn-down farmhouse they've had since the 80s. I used to think I'd move somewhere bigger, Seattle maybe, but life had other plans. By 30, I'd built something stable. I worked as a logistics coordinator for a construction supply company, decent hours, decent money. I'd bought a 2-bedroom house on Maple Drive, a cracked-up Ford F-150, and most importantly, I had Hannah. Hannah and I met at a volunteer event when we were 22. She was studying finance at the community college. I was still trying to figure out what to do with my life. She had this laugh, bright, contagious, the kind that makes you want to say something funny just to hear it again. She spilled coffee on my jeans that day, apologized so much that we both started laughing. That became our thing. Laughter, mistakes, and long drives with no destination. We dated 6 years before marrying. Everyone said we were the perfect couple, that couple who seemed to genuinely like being together. For a while, they were right. Fridays were our ritual. Chinese takeout, some dumb movie, and her falling asleep halfway through with her head on my shoulder. We talked about kids, maybe getting a cabin by the lake someday. I thought I was happy. I really did. The first crack came slow. Hannah got promoted at Westfield Accounting, one of those mid-sized firms that pretends it's a family. She started coming home later. I figured it was stress. The economy was rough, tax season worse. Then her phone started lighting up at odd hours. At first, I didn't think much of it. She had friends, co-workers. But one night, around 10 p.m., I saw her smiling at her phone in that quiet way people do when they're reading something they shouldn't be. "Who's that?" I asked from the couch. She jumped a little. "Just work." "Mark sent a meme about spreadsheets, Mark." I didn't know a Mark. Still, I let it slide. That's what trust is, right? Letting it slide. A week later, she came home smelling like a different cologne. Not perfume. Cologne. Musky. Sharp. I knew that smell. My stomach went cold. "You switch laundry detergent?" I tried to keep it light. She looked at me, almost startled. "Oh, no, I guess someone at work hugged me goodbye." That answer stuck in my head like a splinter. By mid-September, she was practically living at the office. I told myself it was temporary, that after the quarter ended, she'd come back to me. But something inside me already knew better. One Thursday, she texted, "Late meeting tonight." Don't wait up. Her late meetings had become routine. But that night at 8:47 p.m., I heard her car pull into the driveway. When she walked in, she looked disheveled, hair loose, lipstick smudged, and that same musky cologne wrapped around her like a secret. "Hey," I said carefully. "Thought you were still at work." "Yeah, finished early." She dropped her bag on the floor, avoiding my eyes. "I'm exhausted." She went straight upstairs to shower. While the water ran, her phone buzzed on the counter. I told myself not to look. I told myself I was better than that, but my hands had other plans. The preview on the screen said, "Can't stop thinking about you." Last night was perfect. The name above it, Mark Rains. My chest felt like it had caved in. I didn't open the thread. I didn't need to. When she came out of the shower, I pretended to be asleep. That was the night trust died. The next evening, I met my best friend Aaron at the dockyard, a small bar overlooking the river. He'd known me since middle school. Blunt, loyal, the kind of guy who tells you when your fly's down before anyone else notices. I told him everything. Aaron leaned back, eyes narrowing. You saw the text yourself? Yeah. Then you already know, man. Don't gaslight yourself. You know Hannah better than anyone. I stared into my beer, the foam trembling. I keep hoping I'm wrong, he sighed. Hope's good for a lot of things. Not this 2 nights later I confronted her. We were eating dinner, leftover stir-fry, barely touched. Hannah, I said quietly, are you seeing someone else? Her fork froze midair. What? You heard me. She blinked fast, eyes wide, playing confusion too well. Why would you even ask that? Because you're different. You barely talk to me. You smell like someone else. And I saw a text, Hannah, from Mark. Her face went pale. For a second she was speechless, caught between lies. Then she shook her head. Ryan, it's not what you think. He's harmless. He flirts with everyone. Last night was perfect. Doesn't sound harmless. Her chair scraped back. I'm not doing this right now. She left the table, footsteps sharp on the stairs. I sat there staring at her half-eaten food, realizing I was sharing my home with a stranger. That night I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I heard her whispering downstairs. I crept to the hallway. The sound was faint, a low, urgent murmur, like she was on the phone. But when I peeked around the corner, she wasn't holding a phone. She was facing the dark corner of the kitchen, whispering into it. Hannah? She turned slowly. Her face looked wrong somehow. Her smile too tight, her eyes too wide. Go back to bed, she said softly. I did. Not because I believed her, because I was scared. Over the next week, things got stranger. I'd wake up to find her staring out the window at nothing, her reflection faint in the glass. Sometimes she'd laugh under her breath, like someone had told her a secret. One morning, I found her phone on the counter. Every photo of us together had been deleted. I asked her about it. She smiled thinly. Just cleaning up space. The final night still feels like a fever dream I can't wake from. It was late October, rain hammering the roof. I fell asleep on the couch watching reruns. Around 3 a.m., a heavy thud upstairs jolted me awake. My heart raced. Hannah! No answer. I grabbed a flashlight and went up. The bedroom door was half open. Hannah, I whispered again. The beam from the flashlight cut through the dark and froze on 2 shapes. Hannah was standing beside the bed, motionless. Beside her stood something else. Tall, black, its limbs too long, its grin splitting its face ear to ear. Eyes glowing white, not with light, but with hunger. They both turned to look at me at the same time. Ryan, Hannah said in a voice that wasn't hers. You shouldn't have looked at the phone. The flashlight slipped from my hand. I don't remember running, just rain, tires skidding, my breath tearing my throat apart. When I came to, I was parked outside Aaron's house, shaking. By sunrise, I forced myself to go back. The front door was unlocked, the house silent. All her things were gone, clothes, toiletries, everything. The police filed a missing person report. They asked the usual questions. I told them she'd been distant. They asked if we'd fought. I said yes. I didn't tell them about the thing I saw. How could I? It's been 11 months. I still live in that house. I tell myself it's because I can't afford to move. But the truth is, part of me is waiting. For answers. For punishment. I'm not sure. Some nights I drive by the Westfield office. The lights are always off, but sometimes I see a car parked out front. A silver Honda, Mark's car. And once, just once, I saw a figure standing by the upstairs window. Too tall, too still. People say grief makes you see things. Maybe that's true. But sometimes when I close my eyes, I smell that same musky cologne. And from somewhere in the dark, I hear her whisper my name, smiling. You shouldn't have looked at the phone. Story 7, I always thought I understood love. Not the movie kind, the messy, inconvenient, real kind. The kind you build slowly, brick by brick, until it feels unshakable. My name is Caleb Turner, and for most of my life, I believed in the kind of loyalty my parents had. 36 years of marriage in a small Ohio town where every face was familiar and every promise meant something. I wasn't perfect, but I was steady, worked hard, paid my bills, kept my word. At least, I used to think that was enough. When I met Lena, I was 28. She was 26, a trauma nurse at St. Anthony's Medical Center in Cleveland. I remember that first night like it's tattooed behind my eyes. Cold November air, a broken down car, and her standing on the shoulder of I-71, waving her phone in frustration. I pulled over, offered a ride to the next gas station. She smiled, God, that smile, and said, "You don't look like the serial killer type." I laughed. "You don't look like the trusting type." That's how it started, simple, unplanned. Within months, we were inseparable. She was bright, sarcastic, and full of this restless energy that made me feel like I was always catching up. I was a construction site foreman, waking up at 5 a.m. covered in dust while she worked 12-hour night shifts patching up strangers. We made it work. Or I thought we did. 2 years later, we got married in a courthouse with just our parents watching. Lena wore a simple blue dress and a necklace her grandmother had given her. We didn't have much, just a rented apartment above a bakery that always smelled like fresh bread. But it was ours. For the first few years, I was happy. We both were. I'd wake up to her sleeping face next to mine, her hair a mess, her hand resting on my chest. On Sundays, we'd drive to Lake Erie, grab coffee, and talk about buying a house one day. I thought I'd finally found peace, but peace never lasts long. It started small. Lena began volunteering for more night shifts. She said the hospital was understaffed, and I believed her. Nurses work insane hours. I'd heard it 1,000 times. But something in her tone changed. Her warmth cooled. Her laughter felt practiced. Then came the phone. She used to leave it lying around carelessly. Now it was glued to her, in the bathroom, at dinner. Even when we watched TV, it was always face down beside her, lighting up with messages she never opened in front of me. One night I joked, "Who are you texting so much? Secret boyfriend?" She didn't laugh, just said quietly, "You're being weird, Caleb." The kind of weird that grows in your gut, that whispers things you don't want to believe. I tried to shake it off. I told myself I was tired, paranoid. But once you start doubting someone you love, every detail turns into a clue. She started wearing perfume again, the kind she'd stopped using years ago, jasmine and smoke. Her scrubs were ironed, her lipstick darker. When I hugged her, there was a faint smell of cologne, not mine. I started keeping track, not proud of it, but I did. The days she said she worked late, the nights she came home too quiet. Then one Thursday around 11:30 p.m., I woke to the sound of her keys in the door. I checked the time. Her shift had ended at 9. When she came in, her hair was damp, her cheeks flushed. "Rough night?" I asked. She nodded. "Emergency surgery." "We lost someone." Her voice cracked perfectly, like an actress who'd rehearsed the line. But it didn't match the hospital's website, which I checked at 3 a.m., scrolling through updates about patient incidents. There was no emergency surgery that night. Something inside me snapped into silence. I stopped asking questions, started collecting proof. The next Friday, she said she'd picked up a double. I knew she hadn't, so I followed her. I parked across from St. Anthony's under a flickering street lamp. My chest was tight. I watched the staff entrance for 2 hours. She finally appeared at 8:45 p.m. Not in scrubs, in a black coat, hair done, heels clicking against the pavement. She walked 2 blocks to a small bar on Chester Avenue. A man was waiting by the door, tall, maybe late 30s, with dark hair and the kind of confidence that made me hate him instantly. When she saw him, she smiled, a smile I hadn't seen in months. He kissed her like he'd done it 100 times. I didn't confront her that night. I just drove home and sat in the dark until morning. The world felt distant, muffled. A week later, I confronted her. "Who's the guy you've been seeing?" I asked. My voice was calm, almost too calm. She blinked. "What guy?" Don't do that, Lena. Don't lie. Her face drained of color. You followed me? I followed my wife, I said, because she stopped acting like one. She broke then, tears, shaking, apologies. His name's Michael. He's a doctor at the hospital. It wasn't supposed to happen. I was lonely. You've been so gone lately. I was working for us, I said. You found someone else instead of saying you were unhappy? She sobbed, clutching my arm. I ended it. I swear. It's over, I wanted to believe her. God help me. Part of me did. But that night, when she touched me, I felt nothing but disgust. I slept on the couch. That's when the whispering started. It began softly like wind under a door. My name. Caleb. I thought it was my imagination. Stress, maybe. Guilt. But then came the footsteps. Light. Dragging. Across the hardwood. One night I woke to the sound of someone sitting on the edge of the couch. The cushions dipped under unseen weight. I turned on the lamp. No one. Just the faint scent of jasmine. I started dreaming about Lena standing over me. Eyes hollow, mouth whispering things I couldn't understand. Each night she was closer. Then one night I woke and saw her silhouette in the doorway. Lena, I whispered. She didn't answer. Just stood there. Her head tilted slightly like she was studying me. Then she turned and walked down the hall toward our bedroom. When I followed seconds later, the bed was empty, cold. But there was something on her pillow, a folded piece of paper, 3 words written in her handwriting. We're still home. The next morning my phone rang. It was the hospital. Mr. Turner? The voice was hesitant. There's been an accident. Your wife, she was involved in a collision late last night. We're so sorry. I remember dropping the phone. The world went completely still. I thought about the shadow in the hallway, the note. If she'd died before that moment, then who or what had been in the apartment? It's been 2 years. I moved to Denver. New job, new apartment. I tell myself I'm fine, but some nights I wake to that same whisper. My name, soft, just inches from my ear. Sometimes I find small things misplaced. Her necklace on the counter, her perfume bottle on the dresser. Things I haven't seen since the police cleared out our old apartment. Last week when I got home from work, there was a note on my doorstep, folded neatly, same handwriting, same 3 words. We're still home. I burned it, but the smoke smelled like jasmine. And now as I sit here writing this, I hear footsteps in the hallway again, soft, familiar. The air shifts, colder. Something sits down beside me. The couch dips. Lena, I whisper. A voice answers, faint, broken. You said forever. The lights flicker. I close my eyes, and when they come back on, I'm not alone. Story 8. I used to think that evil was something you read about in news headlines. The kind of thing that happened in faraway cities to people who somehow invited it into their lives. I never thought it would show up in mine, wearing my wife's smile. My name is Evan Miller, and I grew up in Portland, Maine, a small coastal city where people still wave at their neighbors and gossip travels faster than the tide. My dad was a fireman. My mom worked at a bakery downtown. They were married for nearly 40 years. Steady, loyal, old-fashioned love. The kind that looked unshakable. I believed I'd have that too someday. When I met Lily, I was 27. She worked in marketing for a small local firm, and she had this quiet charm, not loud or attention-seeking, but comforting, like a soft song you don't realize you've memorized until you catch yourself humming it. We met at a coffee shop one rainy morning. She accidentally spilled her latte all over my laptop bag. I was frustrated, sure, but she laughed. This nervous, breathy laugh, and something about it melted my irritation. 2 years later, we were married. Our first house was a little 2-story colonial on the edge of Scarborough, not far from the woods. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Lily filled it with candles, plants, and framed pictures of us. I'd come home after long days at the insurance firm, and she'd be there, barefoot, hair tied up, cooking something that made the whole house smell like rosemary and butter. Life felt calm, grounded, safe. But that's the thing about safety. It makes you stop looking for danger. The first signs came quietly. It started with her phone. She used to leave it lying around, unlocked, face up. But one night I noticed her flip it over mid-conversation. Just a small movement, subtle, but enough to plant a seed in my mind. Then came the night she said she was staying late at work. New client, she'd say, tossing on her coat. Big project. I'll be home late. Want me to bring you dinner? I asked once. She hesitated, is barely a second, before smiling. That's sweet, babe, but I'll grab something on the way. The seed grew. By mid-November, she was staying out past midnight at least twice a week. I told myself it was stress, work, maybe even seasonal depression. I'd seen her go through burnout before. I wanted to trust her. But one night, I woke up at 2:47 a.m. The bed was cold beside me. Her car wasn't in the driveway. When she finally came home, she smelled faintly of whiskey and perfume. That wasn't hers. You okay? I asked, sitting up. She froze in the doorway. Yeah, we went out for drinks after finishing a proposal. I didn't want to wake you. Her voice was steady. Too steady. A few days later, I confided in my best friend Mark. We'd known each other since high school, and he'd always been the pragmatic type. You're probably overthinking it, he said, sipping his beer. Lily's always been loyal. Maybe she's just stressed. Yeah, I said, though I didn't believe it. Maybe. But something in me couldn't rest. So the next Friday, when she said she'd be working late again, I followed her. She drove out of town, not toward the city, but the opposite direction, down a narrow road that led toward the state park. She pulled into a dimly lit parking lot near a cabin-style bar called The Pines, a place I'd never seen her go before. I parked a few rows back and waited. 5 minutes later, a tall man stepped out of the bar. Dark jacket, broad shoulders. He leaned in close to her window, and she smiled. That same nervous, breathy laugh from when we first met. Then she got out, and they hugged. Not friendly, not platonic. The kind of hug that lingers. And then they kissed. I remember gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers went numb. I couldn't even breathe. My wife, the woman I trusted more than anyone, was wrapped in someone else's arms in a dark parking lot. I drove home in silence, replaying it over and over, until my brain felt bruised. When she walked through the door around midnight, pretending everything was normal, I asked quietly, "Who is he, Lily?" Her eyes widened, just for a second, before she forced a laugh. "Who?" "The guy at the Pines," I said. Her smile disappeared. "You followed me?" "Answer the question." She set her purse down slowly. "You're acting paranoid, Evan." "Don't gaslight me," I snapped. "I saw you." "You kissed him," she didn't deny it. She just stared at me, calm, detached, and said, "Maybe you shouldn't have been watching." That one sentence gutted me. No guilt, no tears, just cold indifference. After that night, everything changed. We slept in separate rooms. She stopped trying to explain, and I stopped asking. I didn't know what to do. File for divorce? Confront the other guy? Part of me still loved her, or maybe I loved who she used to be. Then one evening in late January, I got a text from an unknown number. "You don't know the whole story." I thought it was spam, until another one came seconds later. "She isn't just cheating, Evan. She's planning something worse." My chest went cold. I called the number. No answer. I texted back. Nothing. That night, while Lily showered, I went through her phone. Most of her messages were deleted, but she'd missed one thread in her hidden folder. A contact saved under the name EM, with messages that made my stomach twist. EM. He's suspicious. Lily. Then we'll have to move faster. EM. You sure he won't fight back? Lily. He won't see it coming. Move faster? What the hell did that mean? I spent the whole night staring at those words, replaying every moment of our marriage. Every smile, every laugh, every "I love you." Was any of it real? The next morning, Lily acted like nothing was wrong. She made coffee, humming softly, wearing that old flannel shirt of mine she used to steal. "Want pancakes?" she asked, smiling. I stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman in front of me with the one plotting behind my back. "Sure," I said quietly, playing along. 2 days later, she told me she was going to stay with her friend Marcy for the weekend. "I need a little space," she said. I nodded. Take all the time you need. But when she left, I didn't stay home. I followed her again. This time, she didn't go to Marcy's. She drove nearly an hour north into the woods outside Rangeley, where she turned down a dirt road and stopped near an old cabin. I parked far back, crept close enough to see through the blinds. Inside, Lily was with the same man. Papers spread across the table, a map, something that looked like a house layout. I squinted and saw my own name scrawled across one page. They were talking, animated, urgent. I couldn't hear much through the glass, but I caught fragments. Insurance money. No one will find him. Make it look like an accident. My heart stopped. They weren't planning an affair. They were planning my death. 2 weeks later, Lily came to me like nothing had happened. "Evan," she said softly, "I think we should go for a walk. Somewhere quiet. Talk things through." Every instinct in me screamed, "Don't go." But I needed to know. Needed proof. So I went. We drove out near the same woods. The snow was thick that day, soft beneath our boots. The air was sharp, cold enough to sting my lungs. We walked for maybe 10 minutes before she stopped. Her voice was calm. "You should have just let it go, Evan." I turned. "What are you talking about?" Then I heard it. A branch snapped behind me. The man from the cabin stepped out of the trees, holding something long and rough in his hands. A rope. "Lily," I whispered, "what is this?" She didn't answer. I ran. Branches slashed my face. My boots slipped on the ice. Behind me, I heard their footsteps pounding, her voice shouting, "Don't let him get away." My lungs burned, vision blurred. I stumbled, caught myself, kept running, until I saw it. A light in the distance. A cabin. But something inside me said no. That's their trap. I veered off into the dark, crashing through the brush until my legs gave out. The last thing I remember was the crunch of snow and the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears before everything went black. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. The doctor said a couple of hikers found me unconscious by the roadside. "Lucky you didn't freeze to death out there," he said. But I wasn't found anywhere near where I'd collapsed. The police took my statement, but I left out the part about Lily. Without proof, it would sound insane. When I finally got home, her things were gone. No note, no goodbye, just emptiness. It's been 8 months now. The house feels wrong, too quiet. Some nights I still get texts from that same unknown number. "She isn't finished. Watch your back." I changed my phone number twice, moved once, but somehow the messages still come. Sometimes when I step outside at night, I swear I see movement in the woods. Just a shadow at first, tall still, watching, and once, just once, I thought I heard her voice whisper my name from the trees. "Evan." Soft, familiar, loving. I don't go near the woods anymore because I know she's still out there and she's not done yet.